Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. I'm Anthony Giuliano, and my guest this week is Javon Bell. Javon, how you doing?
Doing great. How about yourself?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for doing this. You just confessed to me that you like to stay under the radar, and here we are putting you over the radar. We're putting you out there, so we appreciate you getting out of your comfort zone.
You're welcome, and we have this on the record that this might be the one and only time I might do this, so let's make the best of it.
You have it here first, everyone. This is your one and only chance to hear Javon's story. All right. Well, as you know, thanks for listening to past episodes. We talk about career path. We talk about some of the work you do, and then we do a speed round version of some of those things. But I want to start at the beginning. Usually before we hit record, I get the whole story, but you gave us a nice little cliffhanger right as we were getting set up, where you said that your path has been a little bit different and took some twists and turns. And it started in Normal, Illinois, correct?
Correct, yeah.
All right. So talk to us about what you were thinking in terms of a career, where you went from there, and whether you stayed on that path or made a pivot.
Oh, wow. Really, in high school, all I cared about was basketball.
Okay.
Had this dream I was going to go to college and play NBA and everything. And then somewhere around my senior year, I kind of had the realization of like, it's not going to happen. And what do I really want to do? Mm-hmm. And even then, when I was playing basketball, it was more so of, okay, we know we're going to make it here, but what's the next step in college? Mm-hmm. And as far as what kind of education I want to get, I didn't want to be one of those guys that, well, yeah, you play sports, but you have a general ed, or you didn't have anything sustainable because you're so focused on this dream.
Yeah, you can't see beyond the sport you're playing. Yeah.
Correct. And, and I was doing it, and I've been playing travel basketball at that time since I was in like 7th grade, and so it's all I knew. And then, I took a class my senior year. It was it's like a website, web development class, an intro, and to be honest, I kind of like blew it off just because it's my senior year, and I'm just cruising through at this point, not really caring. But looking back, I think that was the first point of something serious. And when I decided to move to Fort Wayne after I graduated, I still really didn't know what I wanted to do, and went ahead and lived with my grandmother for the first semester, and I wound up taking that one off, so I didn't go to school right away. When I graduated high school, I just needed to figure out what I wanted to do.
Yeah,
and so when I think around October or so, my uncle takes me. He's like, "Hey, I want to drive you around to Fort Wayne, get you kind of introduced to it." And we're driving. He's like, "Hey, where do you want to go to college?" And I'm looking out the window, just kind of, dreaming or whatnot. And happened to be on Coliseum. I look over and I said, "I guess I'll go to this one here," which happened to be IPFW. And I was like, "Sounds okay." And I don't know what this Indiana Purdue combination is. It's weird, So I figure we'll go there, and that's kind of how I got started.
Okay.
And then
so you could have been driving by any school.
I didn't know any history background. I just knew that I needed to go.
Yeah.
But I've always felt like it, to a certain point, it doesn't matter where you go.
Sure.
If you have the drive, you have the focus, it's just a name attached to a piece of paper. It's about the person. So I always kind of had that mentality with school. So it's just, hey, long as I'm able to learn, get the education, I'm great. And so when after I, applied, got in, figured out, hey, what's your major? And kind of had the back of the mind back in that class that I took. I was like, I want to do something maybe more graphical, artsy and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I'm not really like an artsy guy, I have to admit, but I knew that was the one degree and one path that I could take, that it didn't really matter what your test scores were.
Sure.
You had to talk, speak, prove your point to get your message across, because I think that's the basis of any business.
Yeah.
No matter what you go to, you have to be able to present, you have to be able to talk, you have to be able to, to tell your side and to be able to explain it, because there's, in the marketing design world, 1 + 1 does not equal 2. It can equal whatever it is, and that same solution might work with one client, might not work for another. And so I like that challenge, and it kind of put me in a different mind frame as I was going for the degree. And so that's kind of how I picked graphic design, just because I didn't want to take tests.
So your experience, the web class you took in high school, was that straight HTML, or were you doing things more complex than that?
It was straight HTML.
Yeah.
And at the time, I understood it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was cool because I feel like the guy in the Matrix just typing all the, typing the keyboard and all the numbers and letters going through. That's how I felt, but I wasn't really doing anything but like making just a little slider,
Yeah.
this image appear.
Yeah.
And so, but I really loved that. And it was so sad to me that I was at that school for, 4 years through, and I never knew like this class existed or like there was a whole room of Macs, like there's 20 different Macs.
Yeah.
Never knew this existed the whole time until then. And so it just opened my eyes at the point of like, why isn't this being pushed? Or why isn't this career path being taught from a counselor or high school? Like it was almost kind of forgotten in a way at the time.
Yeah. Well, and that's true with a lot of what you see with digital marketing. There's some schools that they're catching up, but a lot really are still, teaching old marketing and not what consumers are consuming and what marketers are marketing these days.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I remember I mentioned HTML because I was a very early, very bad web designer for a very short period of time. It was never my full-time job, but I was the, and this is impressive, I was the volunteer webmaster for the Fort Wayne Track Club.
Webmaster.
Yes, that's an old term. And I had still the thickest book I've ever owned was an HTML book. What I liked about it is as an English major, I liked the fact that there was a right answer. And, you put some code in, it either worked or it didn't, as opposed to, what I had studied. So it had that going for it, but that was obviously a different time. All right, so you go to IPFW, then IPFW.
Yeah.
And you get a degree in graphic design?
Graphic design, yes.
Oh, so not even web development. Okay.
No, they didn't even offer that. They didn't even have it offer. And when I actually decided to take my first web development class, I was really at the cusp of figuring out what I wanted to do. And to go back a little bit, I'm kind of a competitive person, kind of quiet competitive. And kind of got underneath my skin when some of the professors were talking about other students. They're so great, they're this, they're that, I'm not going to say any names, but this and that, and I kind of like, all right, what's so special about this person? Like, what's so special about him or her, And actually, and I started doing the math of like, okay, this is what I want to do. There's this many people graduating, times that by how many schools in the area, times, add on how many schools in the state. There's not enough jobs, period. Mm-hmm. There's not enough jobs for everybody who's coming out, and I needed to figure out what's going to be my angle. And after talking to a few of the students that were talked about a lot, come to find out that one thing they all had in common is that they were afraid of web.
Okay.
And so I figured out at that point, like, that's my end.
Yeah.
And when I started early on doing learning web and just learning just the components, how everything was going, I got different reaction from people when I would tell them, what are you going to school for? Oh, graphic design. Oh, it was like that. But when I said, going for website design and development, the whole mood conversation changed. It was almost like, wow, you're actually doing something impressive, not something that I feel like I could do.
Yeah.
And so I really realized at that point, like, there is a market for this. And I think that, when I decided to pick it up, it was really only for just to separate myself out from any other applicants.
Yeah.
It kind of came out of a hobby.
Yeah.
But then I slowly realized that I could kind of make a career out of this, and there's just not a lot of people in the space, so I felt like it was wide open.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got into learning web development, web design, and then I took a couple classes in school, and then it was just like, all right, even though they didn't have, per se, a web design class, would still take the graphic design with the web, with the web in mind, and I just spend, all my free time learning, reading books, testing, and kind of went from there. And then it just one thing after the next started getting good. And so I kind of marketed myself around IPFW as the web guy.
Okay.
And that has been great even till now.
Yeah. Well, and there was a time, and I think these days are over, but there was a time when if you were a web developer, you probably weren't much of a designer because you were more into the technical side of it. And if you were a designer, you probably had, as you mentioned, no affinity for or knowledge of how to design for digital. Again, I think those days are over, but there was a sweet spot there where if you could do both, we talked before we hit record about Brandon Pete. Brandon Pete will probably get a couple shout outs on this episode.
Shout out to Brandon.
But he was one of the first I met who I was like, oh, he understands both. So that I could see where that would distance you from the competition, so to speak, right out of the gate. So do you go then from PFW, IPFW, into a job in web development, or is there some ramp up time?
So there's a few things that happened before I got a job in there. And
Yeah.
so at that time, I think I was ended my sophomore, junior year. I was going around much as Fort Wayne as possible, just asking non-for-profits, hey, I
Yep.
will, let's work. You need any web presence, need any help? I would just make phone calls, emails all day. Like, I'll do it for free. Like, just get me in the door because I needed
Yeah.
contacts. And the first company that I volunteered for was Caring About People in Fort Wayne. That was the first one, and
Okay.
did some work there. And then there was a couple churches that I did some stuff for as well. So I'm just doing it just to get experience, just to do things. And then my first internship officially came from IPFW, like their web department.
Okay.
I took a class with Bart Tyner, and he was teaching me like the beginning workings of responsive design, of getting away from having a mobile website and
Yeah.
a desktop, of creating both.
Yeah.
And he was teaching me right at the time of responsive. So utilizing one set of code for HTML, PHP, or whatnot, and just utilizing CSS to organize the content for different sizes. And so after I was learning that and really understanding what he was teaching me, I kind of asked him, like, if there's any way possible I can intern or do anything for the university, and put in a good word for me. And that was my first interim of an internship officially, was with IPFW.
Okay. All right. So you do a couple internships, you do some projects for free to build up the portfolio. Where do you get your first real chance to do it full time?
Real chance is Reacher Design.
Yep.
Reacher was the first place to give me a chance. Hired me on as an intern, and so I finished out my school year from there. And from there, it was kind of just the world kind of opened up to kind of see as far as what I still needed to learn, what different projects, clients. There was just so much that was so new to me, and
Yeah.
I got exposed to that really quickly. But that was my first official job.
Okay.
As like in the web area.
Now, was Andy Welfley there when you were there, or was Andy before you?
He was there.
He was there.
He was
Okay.
there, content strategist, and I think he was there for a couple years before
Yeah.
he went off to Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah. And now he's at Adobe, and he just bought a house in San Francisco, so he's doing well.
I did see that. I
Yeah.
did see that. And funny enough that my youngest brother, he went to Stanford. He actually was interning at Adobe as well.
Really?
He was working on the After Effects.
Wow.
And I know that they wound up actually meeting and talking for a bit when he
that's
first
cool.
went out there. So that was actually pretty cool to kind of hear that they've connected.
Yeah.
And working on, I don't think they work on the same team together, but just knowing that they were both out there together was pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool. So you're at Research. How long are you there, and why do you decide to do something else?
I think I was there for about 4 years, I want to say.
Okay.
4 years, and learning so much between the design aspect, from UI, UX early on, and web development. It got to a certain point where realizing that I was, like I said, doing a hybrid of designing, development. I was doing so much, and speaking, presenting in front. It got to a point where it's just like, I can do this.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
there's so much demand too.
Yeah, and also too, it's just like I invested all this time, sacrificed a lot, and I needed to see on my own what I could do.
Yeah.
And that bug, that itch that I had just never went away.
Okay.
No, shout out to Research. They're great group of people there. Learned a lot, but it was time to kind of let me see, what happens, even if I fall on my face.
Yeah. So what are some of the best things and worst things about doing your own thing?
Oh man. Well, the best thing is, it's, at least to me, is it's all on you. And
Yeah.
I kind of I love that pressure of it's kind of all on me. I can't blame anybody.
Yeah.
or whatnot.
It sounds like you're driven by some of the things that scare the crap out of most people. That's good. Good for you.
Yeah, it's to the point, where I'm okay to fail.
Yeah.
And I'm okay to kind of fall and put it all, because I know that I prepared for the moment. I took a lot of time, away from people, and it was kind of really just kind of jumping in, and so that's the one thing that I love. But I also know, like, that is the same. That's the double-edged sword, where the same thing is, it's all on you. Like,
Yeah.
nothing moves unless you do. And I would say, like, the downfall would be is you, in your mind, at least when I first started, like, you want to do this one thing or two things. I just want to develop websites or design, and that is just one of 20 things that goes into a business. And
You're doing accounting, you're doing sales, you're doing follow-up, you're doing everything.
Doing everything, and you don't actually
it's
get to
all
do
on you. Yeah.
you actually don't get to do exactly what you want to do a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so that to me was the downfall. And with me myself working from home, and I worked from home right away. This is right before a pandemic hit. So by the time COVID hit, oh, I don't want to be home all day. I'm like, oh, we're here, we're seasoned, baby. Like this is nothing to me, But that is the downfall of being able to separate work from home life. From home life, because work can kind of consistently come no matter what. And the fact that this is a hobby for me, it's hard to say, or let me stop for the day, or let me go do something else because this is what I love to do.
Yeah. And if you have a motor, it's really hard to turn it off when everything happens in the same place. I experienced that when the pandemic first hit. I was kind of quietly like, I understand this is really bad for the world. It's really bad for a lot of people, but I feel like I'm built for working in this way. And I said, I'm never going back to the office. But then about 6 months later, it was like, I always feel like I should be working, and I need a environmental shift to turn it off. And that's when I started coming back in. And it's not every day, but it's nice to be able to say, I'm going to go to work so I can't be distracted by all the other things. And I'm going to leave so I don't get distracted by work.
Definitely.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the state of the web from your perspective. There's a lot going on right now with ADA accessibility, with obviously all the changes that are being visited upon the web by social, and that the web is visiting upon social. What are some of the key things that you're focused on, and where do you think things are going from here?
So I'm glad you brought the ADA compliance, because that's something that I take a lot of pride in, as far as making sure the work that I do is accessible for everyone as much as possible.
Yeah.
I think,
and if you don't mind, I want to take a step back because many of our listeners are not web developers. Can you just give us an overview? What does that, there's some people who probably don't think of ADA compliance as applying to websites, but it absolutely does. So can you just give us a little overview and then dive into how you think about it?
So ADA compliant is essentially meaning that, there's things within the code, things of how things are designed for people with different disabilities. That can be from color blindness, that can just be from cognitive ability to, ability to use anything with their hands, visual impairment. There's just a whole lot of things that we kind of take for granted for somebody else who might not be able to navigate the website or application the same way that we do. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the gist of it. And to kind of dive into ADA compliant, the reason why I think that the site design and development are actually more in tune with each other than think, because you have to prepare for ADA compliant from the design side, and you have to make sure that's communicated from the development. If one of those sides falls off, then you don't have a compliant website. Mm-hmm. And so that can be from, adding skip navigation links. This can be from having screen readers, making sure that, there's people who have visual impairment where they have the website essentially read back to them. Mm-hmm. So any images that you put on there and you forget to put a description or alt tag on there, the person that is using your website won't be able to make sense of it. Mm-hmm. If you have form validations, you don't have things named properly in the ARIA tags or labels, they won't be able to fill out a form. And that can be as simple as applying for a job, mm-hmm. where you don't know that if this field is to put your name or your address or anything of that nature. And so that's where helping out, people who aren't able to utilize your product the same way as majority of your users.
And it's not only the right thing to do, but it can be very costly for some entities if their websites are not ADA compliant. Correct?
Very, very costly. And it's one of those things too, where it's not just, hey, let's throw this on top of that. Let's throw this on top of your website or your app, and it makes it all better. Mm-hmm. A lot of it actually goes within the code itself. Mm-hmm. And so if that's not properly developed right, it can get very costly to add on top of there instead of honestly just rebuilding it.
Yeah, and you can get sued in some industries if you're not ADA compliant, correct?
Yeah, yes. And when I mean sued, I mean, a lot of money.
Yeah.
And there's been cases already of that.
Yeah.
Where, spending millions of dollars, that they have to pay out for that. So please, not to scare anybody, but please make sure that you are keeping accessibility in mind. If you're starting a new project at the moment, or you're getting ready to ramp up a new one for your company, making sure that you mention that.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear more about your thinking on some of the trends in web development design. But one question I have for you, I'm going to give you what I think is a softball, but maybe it's not.
Yeah.
But I want to hear your perception on it. I occasionally hear people, they'll say to me, well, I've got a Facebook business page or I'm on LinkedIn. Do I really need a website? And my answer is always emphatically yes. I would assume your answer is the same, but speak from your perspective about why you think it's important, why websites are still valid at a time when people are branding themselves and their organizations through social.
The biggest thing is you have control.
Mm-hmm.
You have control of the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
When you're on Facebook, you're on LinkedIn, and any of these other types of social media, you're at the cuffs of them.
Mm-hmm.
And we know with algorithms and things are changing, that have changed in the last even couple of years, that just because you post something out there and you have 10,000 fans or likes or whatnot, maybe only 100 of them see that.
Yeah.
And there's so much, and that's not the message that you want to see, that you want to send when you have something important that you want to get out to your audience.
Yeah.
With a website, you have much more control. You have a home base. You can kind of do what you want to do. You're not limited to their playing field. And because right now, when you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, you're on the same playing field as everybody else, no matter how great or successful you are. When you have your own home, essentially, as I like to call it, you can do exactly what you want to. You can connect with the people who want to get connected with you easier, and you just have a home base. And especially when we start talking about SEM, SEO, as far as how they can find you, a lot of times through Facebook or through LinkedIn, there are things of that nature. Not knowing that, if the Facebook decides to crash one day, or Instagram, which happens, it seems like every 2 months, you're at the ability of them, and that can be very costly depending on what industry that you're in.
Yeah, for sure. So what are some of the other things, in addition to ADA compliance, in addition to making a case for web still being very relevant? Of course it is. What are some of the other things that you believe people should be focused on?
I think really just making sure that people are really focused on storytelling and user experience. Mm-hmm. That is really the number one. And if there's any example of that, it will definitely be Apple, is making sure that you're putting your users first always. Mm-hmm. And as far as that's from design, that's from content, that's from your media, that's kind of all around as far as telling your own personal story. Everybody's business, either, even if you're individual, you have a story to tell, and you want to make sure that the people are finding you and they're taking the effort to look for you or buy a service from you. Make sure you're giving them the best experience possible, because that is a 24/7 online tool at your hands.
Yeah, well, and Apple, even from a privacy standpoint, much to the chagrin of many marketers, has made it more difficult for marketers to track those who are on Apple devices. So, again, showing that customer first and user first sort of mentality. So what are some of the things, Javon, that you're most proud of? And you don't have to give away any trade secrets, but I've known of you for a long time, and one of the people who recommended you for the podcast was Morgan Ellis at Downtown Wabash. She mentioned what a great job you did with their site. What are some of the other things you've worked on that people might recognize, or that are just some of your personal favorites?
Oh, wow. So I'll just say some of the more recent ones that have launched. Shigs and Pitt. Mm-hmm. That is one website. Love working with the team there. And Josh Volts, shout out to you, Josh. Thank you for bringing me on. That was one that I'm really proud of, just because it's food, ribs, And funny enough, I'm a vegetarian too. So funny enough, working on it.
Did you disclose that at the end of the project or at the beginning?
Actually, if he's listening, it'll be the first time hearing that. But hey, I loved it, because it's like, wow, that looks amazing. But it's like, oh man, that sucks. Why did I make this decision? But no,
they probably have some salads, maybe. I don't know.
That's some stuff there, But no, I love just the creativity and flow of like restaurant websites, because it is visual. It is, it is really like you're going here for one reason or another. There's not a whole lot of flack. And so I love that. Lassus was another one, working with the corporate team on getting their website up. I love working on that project, just because it made me understand gas stations and just the marketing of what they go through on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. We all look at gas stations just as, let me just get my gas, fill up, and go. Unless you have a Tesla or something electric, then that doesn't apply.
Yeah, the vegetarianism of cars. Yeah,
no, that's a good one. I'm gonna take that one. I'm gonna take that. And so, just learning so much about industries that I essentially had no clue on from the outside. Yeah, and so those are the two ones that that really stand out to me. And then, like I said, downtown Wabash, like you mentioned, Morgan, working with those ladies down there, they do an excellent job. And just like I said, really the biggest thing for me is not even really the website, just learning the business and learning what everybody does on a day-to-day basis. And even following social media, you don't really truly understand until you have a heart-to-heart conversation and hearing out the business goals to see exactly what you need to do to help them keep moving forward. And so those are ones. And then currently right now working on United Way of Allen County.
Okay.
That's upcoming. And so won't say much about that as it's still in progress, but that will be another special one with the same reason, making sure that, the community has a place where they can go and get the resources and get anything answered from the agency side or just from an individual.
Yeah. So you being independent, are you generally for the photography and the copy, are you working with a team? Is it an agency? Do you have sort of your group of people you work with? How does that all come together? Is it all of that and more?
Oh yeah, I have a group of team that I work with all aspects, and depending on the project itself. So if we need more content, then I'll call my guy Derek, who's an excellent copywriter, excellent just storytelling and making. He's one of those guys that can take a paragraph and just make it sound so simple in a sentence. Photography, I have a few photographers on hand as well. And then kind of, scattered around for development, front end, back end. So I have probably a group of like 5 or 6 people that have different, more expertise in those areas than I do that I'll contract out to work.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff you can do yourself, but there's some that you just, in order to, you can't clone yourself and do everything.
Correct.
And still sleep. So, yeah.
Correct. And to me, it's all about quality and making sure that anybody who I bring on cares just as much as I do, and making sure the client is getting a great product. And I have no problem hiring anybody for a project, because to me, I care more about the relationship than what the project is going to be.
Yeah.
Especially with web, things can change on the fly. Once you go to print, it's kind of in there. You print, you distribute, but the web can change so much, and it's so evolving to where the business is at that definitely need people that kind of have the same mind frame to making sure that their service that they're providing is evolving as well.
Mm-hmm. So what are your aspirations for, the foreseeable future? Just want to kind of keep doing what you're doing, or do you have aspirations to grow it or do something different?
That's a good question. That's something that I probably think about every day. And then, to be honest with you, I still didn't think, as of today, we're 2020, was May 24th, 2022. To be honest with you, I didn't think that websites would still be as needed.
Mm-hmm.
I thought things would have evolved, things would have changed. Mm-hmm. But as it seems that, hey, the future is going to be apps, and then realize of how much red tape it is to make an app and then maintain it. And especially when you have Apple and Google Play kind of controlling, essentially monopolizing, they kind of playing by their rules. It makes it difficult. It makes it difficult to translate, like at least with web, there's usually some type of content management system that you can pass out to a client and they can update, they can make their own stuff, and apps are different. And so that kind of surprised me. And then with the pandemic hit too, it seems like there was a much more increase of, let me care about my web presence. And for the people who were on top of it early on were successful. The people who had to play catch up, are probably still playing catch up.
Yeah.
And we can, I'm not going to say any names, but we noticed that there's no more hiding anymore, because that's how people get access to you.
Well, there was so much of a push, anything that was on the bubble in 2020, what I've heard people say is there was 10 years of digital innovation in about 18 months, and 10 years of consumers moving in that direction in about 18 months because we were forced to. And it's interesting what you say about apps. This just could be because I'm lazy, but I find there's a weird friction with apps. And there's a certain app, I won't mention it by name, but it's a weather app that it's gotten so clunky that I just want to go to Google and type in weather and get the weather instead of going to the app, clicking on the app, getting through all the ads. It's just like, I don't have that kind of time. I do have that kind of time, but I don't think I have that kind of time. So I think that's really prescient to say that, we thought apps were the future, but maybe the web is what we needed all along.
Yeah. And like I said, it's not to a test of, of it, there might not be another surge or anything like that. I just think that there's so much cost, there's so much a level learning curve, and it's kind of isolated to the point where if you don't understand it, then you can't manage it. And you also need somebody to be there kind of all the time of how they run. And it's just a lot right now. And so I feel that in the future there might be another push, a resurgence, which I would love to see, because I think they are great aspects of taking your big picture and putting it and condensing it down to what the users need.
Yeah, as a tool, as something you can use specifically. Yeah. All right, well, let's pivot to the speed round of the show. I'm going to ask you a few questions. You don't have to answer the questions quickly, but you can if you want.
I decline all of them.
That's the first time someone's done that, and I'm surprised it didn't happen earlier. But I'm actually going to ask you 4 speed round questions. 2 of them will be, I don't think they're outside your comfort zone, but maybe we'll see. The first is an easy one. Let's talk about career path. And you're an entrepreneur. You've done some things on your own. You've worked for other businesses. What's your one piece of advice if people want to know how do you build a fulfilling career? How do you succeed in your career? What have you learned that you think other people should know?
You have to attach yourself to your own personal mission and where you want to go rather than the project or the job that you're at. If you attach yourself to a certain project and job that you're at, which I used to do, it can be draining. You can, especially as in the creative industry, when somebody doesn't like what you're doing or whatnot, you can take it personal. But it's really figuring out your own personal journey and making sure that your own personal growth is important. And so like enjoying the journey from the beginning to end, no matter what goes on there, because you're going to learn so much from an individual, as a team that you're working on, and, whatever goals and aspirations you have going forward, that's what's going to get you. You want to always want to look back a year from now and say, wow, I grew in this area, or I got more efficient here. And it won't be about a certain project or a certain task that you're assigned to, but it's just making sure that you are attaching yourself to whatever that mission is. And it's different for everybody. But that's one of my biggest advices, as far as building your career.
All right, great. So here comes one of the curveball questions. So today there are a lot of products out there that people can DIY a website. Everything from Wix to Squarespace to Google, what's it called? Google's tool that I've actually used and probably built terrible websites with. But with all those tools available, do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing that there's all this choice out there where you can do it yourself or you can hire someone? I suspect I know what you might say, but I want to hear it from you. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, and why do you feel that way?
I honestly think it's a good thing. I personally think it's a good thing. You should have the choice, as far as how you're going to go about your path. And I think a lot of times it's almost like the self-checkout at the grocery store. There's still just as many people lining up, for a person to check out than not. And so sometimes if you have a few items that you want to check out to the checkout lane really quickly, that's all you need. You go. And I feel like that's with some of those DIY sites where you just need something up. You kind of have a vision as far as what you want to do for certain functionalities. And if it's out the box for you, then go for it. Then there's the people, with 2 carts full of groceries, that need somebody to, to bag it and sort it in a different way. And I think that's where, that's where somebody more of a custom solution, or that would come in play. And so to me, it's just like whatever your problem is, there's somebody there that can help you out, and everybody's problem is different. And so I think it's healthy, and it brings a good competition, and it forces people like me to really hone in on your services, your added value, and to making sure that, they're getting the best product, because if not, that same person can honestly get a different, that same type of work if you're not being creative enough somewhere else. Yeah, you have to prove your worth for sure. Yeah. Okay. So what's your one best piece of advice if people are launching a website? What's the most important thing they should be thinking about? Now, again, not to give away any trade secrets, but and it could be something people miss that they should be thinking about, or something that they think about, but you want to reinforce its importance. Oh, that is a difficult
And I didn't prepare you for that question at all.
No,
I just pulled that out of nowhere.
That's good. Only because it depends on the type of person or user or business it comes from. That really depends. But I would definitely make sure that, at the least, especially because if there's any type of marketing, and not realize how much marketing in your website comes into play, making sure that you have some type of analytics or some type of data, so you know what people are or what pages are being visited, what people are seeing, how long they're staying, to have a baseline to know if you're successful or you need to pivot. And so that's the one thing, is having data at your hand. And that's one thing a website does. And so making sure that you're able to see that from a development side, and then also just from a user side, because that data alone will be able to help you pivot your online business, and you can easily adapt to your customers, or anybody who wants to learn more information about you.
Yeah. So make sure that you're measuring success and that you're listening to the experts, that being the people who use the site. Awesome. All right. Here's the last one. What is your favorite tip, trick, hack, tool that you use in your work? Something that makes your work easier, that you think is deserving of recognition. Again, it could be something, we've had people say pen and paper. We've had people talk about apps. We've had people talk about Evernote. What is it for you that you really rely on that you think is great and maybe more people should know about?
I'm kind of laughing right now, but Google. You do not know everything.
No, wait a minute.
You
Where
won't
do
know
I find
anything.
this?
Google will help. There are so many people, so many resources for whatever you want to learn.
Yeah.
That's out there. Don't think that if you come across a problem that you're the only person who's came across that problem. Somebody else has had that same problem as you, and they can help figure it out and help you figure it out, or get you on the right path. Google, preferably pages 1 and 2. But that is my secret tool. I do not know everything, but I know how to get it in there.
That is the first time someone's mentioned Google, but it's one of my favorites because it is so true. You know, one time, and this doesn't go back all that far, you know how if you're on you're a Mac, I'm a PC, but on a PC, you can accidentally click on the image screensaver, there I go with another term, and it'll take you to Bing. I once used Bing to find Google, no lie. I was on Bing and I typed in Google, and I was like, someone at Microsoft is very upset right now.
You know, if I were to take a guess, I bet Google being searched on Bing is probably the number 1 search term on there.
All right, so there you have it, folks. That's just the kind of gold you've come to expect from the Azure Marketing Podcast. If you want to learn stuff, go to Google. Javon, this has been great. I really appreciate you doing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks to everyone who took the opportunity to listen to this episode of the Azure Marketing Podcast. We'll be back next week with another great guest, and we hope you'll join us then.